So I don't. No.
Good evening.
Hey, Barb. Good evening.
Hi. Good evening. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good. Hi,
Excuse me.
Julia, and Fred, and Pam, and Cherry. Looks like Santa Claus.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Good to see you all tonight. Tonight, we are having another really exciting um, seminar, and I'm hoping it'll be also exciting for you. We are all going to be in Daniel chapter 7. And most of the text we're going to have is in Daniel chapter 7. I already have so many slides that I'm going to use, so I'm not going to use, I decided not to make any more slides, but I will go sometimes to the book of Daniel and Daniel 7, and I will tell you when I'm there. So if you could, just open your Bibles to Daniel 7 and follow along with me when it's not on the slides. Let's bow our heads, shall we? Gracious God, again, I thank you for this opportunity to open your word. I know, Lord, that so many people have given their lives for this word, for the Bible. And so I ask that we will see its importance today. I pray that your Holy Spirit will just quicken our hearts so that we will be able to hear what your Spirit says to each and every heart here. Thank you so much for answering our prayer. Amen. Tonight we're going to study a key piece that we're going to need in order to unlock some of the prophecies in the book of Revelation. In fact, the more I present this, the clearer revelation gets to me. And so today, for some of you, this might be the first time you will be listening to this, and it might come as a shock to you. For those of you who have listened before, I'm praying that not only will you get something new, because sometimes it's not new, but you see it in a very different way, and different in a sense that will just build your faith in God and just make you appreciate prophecy so much more. Today we're going to go to Daniel chapter 7. Last time we studied on Sunday, we talked about the image that Nebuchadnezzar saw in his dream. This time it's Daniel who had a dream. And instead of being an image, Daniel saw beasts coming out of the earth. Now, when we look at the four beasts, all this beast stands for kingdoms, as Daniel chapter 7 will bring out. And again, sometimes I might go too fast. And if this is the first time you're hearing it, it might be a little confusing. So please feel free to actually ask questions. I will try to go as slow as I possibly can. And if I go too fast or I just skip over something, it's not because I'm trying to skip over something. Sometimes I have it in my head that this is should be something that's understood already. So please feel free to ask. So these four beasts that God saw Daniel, the book of Daniel actually says these four beasts are four kingdoms. So let's go right into it, shall we? Daniel 7, verse 2 and 3. Daniel spoke, saying, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea. And four great beasts came up from the sea, each different from the other. We're going to talk a little bit more about what the sea stands for with the book of Daniel. Because again, like I said, a lot of what we're going to study tonight, we will be able to link up with when the beasts also come up the sea in Daniel chapter 13. But again, these are kingdoms that we know from Daniel 7. In Daniel 7:17, it says, these great beasts, which are four kings which arise out of the earth. Now, in Daniel's vision, in Nebuchadnezzar's vision, which Daniel interpreted, there were also four kingdoms. But instead of having it as beasts, it was four metals on an image, right? Well, today, Daniel doesn't really relate to images. Daniel wasn't an idol worshiper. So God actually brings out this vision to Daniel in a way that a Jew could understand, which is beasts. We talked about the four horses back when we talked about the seven seals. Beasts are very important to prophetic visions. Beasts are very important to prophecy, whether it be the Old Testament or the New Testament. And so Daniel understood the meaning of beasts. And that's when verse 23 says, thus he said, the fourth beast shall be a fourth kingdom on the earth. What's interesting is Daniel actually focused on the fourth beast. There was something about the first three that he might have already understood, but it's the fourth beast that he couldn't. First of all, he couldn't relate to it. It's kind of like that that person who's living on a forest trying to explain a train to when he never saw a train. Daniel never saw this kind of beast. And after he saw it, Daniel 7:15 says, I was grieved and my visions troubled me. So this was one of those visions that even Daniel was terrified of it. grieved about it. There was something about it that really stayed in his heart. And I don't know if you've ever had a dream like that, a dream where you just felt melancholy the whole day because the dream kind of stayed in your mind. For Daniel, it was the same thing, because as we go to the last chapter, the last verse, in verse 28. He says, "This is the end of the account. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts greatly troubled me and my countenance changed, but I kept the matter in my heart." There was something about this dream that he couldn't push away. So he goes into the dream. The first beast that he saw was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I watched till its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to it. This, just like the head of gold, stood for Babylon. And it's interesting that Babylon actually has most of his art as lions. Because lions is one of the most important animals in Babylon. Jeremiah 4:7, in describing Babylon, says, "The lion has come up from his thicket, and the destroyer of nations is on his way." So even Jeremiah, when Daniel saw the lion, he immediately said, "All right, this seems to be Babylon. And his chariots like whirlwind, his horses are swifter than eagles." Again, we begin to see eagles' wings here. And the reason why Babylon has eagle's wings is because it conquered the world, the known world at that time, really, really fast. That's what eagles, just like it says in Jeremiah, his horses are swifter than eagles. So we know that the first beast is Babylon. Now, I want to go back. What does it mean that he was lifted up on the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to it? This part of the text actually shows how the fierceness of Babylon started to deteriorate. Babylon became like a man. Now, if you want to weaken a lion, just make him stand on 2 feet. You can do the same thing with dogs, by the way. Dogs are not nearly as strong on 2 feet as they are on 4. So this whole imagery is about is about Babylon getting weaker, and a man's heart was given to it. Now, I don't know. Obviously, there are some exceptions, but if a man and a lion met on an alley, guess who's going to run away? More than likely, it's going to be the man. I think for the most part, it will be the man who's going to be more scared. And that's what this text is talking about. Babylon is going to be, Babylon is going to diminish in its strength. Babylon is going to diminish in its fierceness. And another beast comes out of the sea, right? And suddenly another beast, a second like a bear, was raised up on one side. And again, I want us to just kind of have an anchor in our minds. A beast coming out of the sea is a kingdom. That is very important when we get to Revelation 13. It says, "And suddenly another beast, a second, like a bear, was raised up on one side, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth, and they said to it, 'Arise, devour much flesh.'" The next kingdom after Babylon is Medo-Persia, just like it was on the image. Now, it says that the bear actually has one side higher than the other. Medo-Persia is 2 different kingdoms together. And the one side is higher than the other was Persia. And after a while, Medo-Persia was actually just became Persia, because the Medes actually conceded the power to the Persians. And when Medo-Persia conquered Babylon, It actually went up to Egypt. So it went down to Egypt and went up to Lydia. So the three ribs that were in his mouth stood for the countries or the kingdoms, if we can call it that Medo-Persia had to conquer in order to be the world power that it was. I want to pause for a second here, and just because I'm going to pause a few times as we go through this prophecy, because when you look at things historically, everything fits perfectly, even with ribs on a bear's mouth, one side being higher than the other, and it's chronological, right? And that's how we get some of our ideas on chronological in the book of Daniel. Now, not everything is chronological, but again, when you look at history, you will see that a few things fit. And when it fits, then you just say, all right, it fits, right? So after this, I look, and there was another, like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. And again, I want to bring out to you that the animals that kept coming out of the sea seems to be weaker and weaker. Now, I know a lot of people would actually argue that, a lion isn't stronger than a bear isn't stronger than a leopard. But in Middle Eastern thinking, I'm not a biologist, and I definitely don't see, fights of different animals. But in Middle Eastern thinking, a lion is the king of the beast. It's called the king of the beast for some reason, right? And so lions in this vision meant it was top animal. Bear is just a little bit lower than the lion. And then when we get to the leopard, it also had 4 wings. What does wings stand for again? It stands for speed, right? And we get that from the book of Jeremiah. So the next kingdom after Medo-Persia is Greece. And Greece conquered the world faster than any of the other kingdoms. In fact, Alexander the Great, after he conquered the last kingdom, he was so depressed that he had no more wars to fight. And so he basically drank himself to death. And this beast also had 4 heads, and a dominion was given to it. Now, again, it's really interesting that when you look historically, Greece, after Alexander the Great, was divided into 4 different kingdoms. It was divided into his 4 generals of Alexander's army. And his 4 generals are Cassander, Lysimachus, Ptolemy, and Seleucus. Greece gets divided into 4 kingdoms, or gets divided into 4. I'm sorry, it's not kingdoms, but it still was called Greece, but it was divided. And you can look this up in history. I understand that history can be controversial, that there will be people who would argue about history, but for the most part, most people would agree that after Alexander died, these are the generals that took over the whole kingdom of Greece. Now, Daniel obviously was a prophet way before Greece. And to actually have, exact amount of divisions in prophecy, for me, shows again how incredible accurate God is. This is the beast we're going to spend most of our time in, because this actually is the beast that Daniel 7 wants to focus on. Remember, on Daniel 2, the focus was on the small stone, the stone that was hewn out of the stone that was hewn out of a rock, that and basically destroyed the whole image. But in Daniel 7, it focuses on this. And the reason why we're studying Daniel 7 right now is because when we go to the book of Revelation, Revelation also focuses on this beast. After this, I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. There was nothing to describe this beast other than its horrible features. The teeth, instead of being regular teeth, you see iron teeth. Remember where we see iron? We saw it on the image. This, again, God is saying, this is where this kingdom is coming from. It's coming from the kingdom of Rome. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Now, instead of 10 toes of the beast in Daniel 2, God wanted Daniel to focus on the 10 horns. This obviously is Rome, but now God has put into the whole kingdom of Rome, including the 10 horns, because again, as we go through the beast, as we go through this vision, we will find out that the horns also become pretty important. And we talked about how in the kingdom of Rome, Jesus was born during the time Rome was in history. It was Rome and the Jews who crucified Jesus. And that is why they're different. When you look at the history of Rome, they're probably like every other kingdom on earth, every other nation on earth, except they were a party to crucifying the Son of God. Now, when we look at the 10 horns, again, it is very much like the 10 toes. The Anglo-Saxons are the British, the Franks are the French, Alemanni is Germany, Visigoths are Spain, Vandals are part of Africa. Now, it says here that 3 horns were plucked. And the 3 out of the 3 horns that were, the 3 nations that have now become extinct out of the 10 different nations in Europe are what's in the bottom of your screen: the Heruli, the Vandals, and the Ostrogoths. They were the ones who were conquered by this little horn. It says, I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up among them, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked out by its roots. So what this vision is saying is that this one horn is going to make those 3 different nations extinct, right? And there in this horns were the eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words. So in this vision, God wanted us to focus on the eyes and also on the mouth. So in review, this horn rose among the 10 horns. That is important, because if you're going to pinpoint where this horn is, it is at a time period when Western Europe was already here. That is important because, again, it's not just me who says this. When it comes to theological historians who really want to get into who changed history, who changed prophecy, it wasn't until there were theologians who actually started pinpointing who this little horn is, that this little horn decided, hey, we better make something up completely different. And that is why the preterist and the futurist views of prophecy came about. But if you're going to look chronologically, it'll make perfect sense that this little horn came up during the time of the 10 countries in Western Europe. It would rise after the 10 horns. It had eyes like a man. In the Bible, a prophet is called a seer because a prophet sees with God's eyes. So basically, this little horn is going to claim to be a prophet. He's going to claim to be a person who is being used by God. So having eyes like a man, this is a human religious system based on man's teaching. It's not eyes like a prophet or eyes like God. It is eyes like a man. That's why it's based on human teaching. It is diverse. It says he shall be different from the first ones. Now, this is another part of the differences. This kingdom, now the Babylonian kingdom was made out of just Babylonians. Medo-Persians were made out of Medes and Persians. They didn't have Filipinos there. They didn't have Chinese there. They didn't have any of these other nationalities. Same thing with Greece. Now, I understand that, colonizing was happening then, like it did in the English Empire. Rome was, again, made out of Roman citizens. This kingdom is not going to be made out of one race. It's not going to be made up of one nationality. That's another way that it's different. It's going to be made up of of people all over the world. It becomes a religio-political power, as we will see. So what would this power do? And this is what troubles Daniel. Daniel 7:25 says, he shall speak great words against the Most High, and he shall wear out the saints of the Most High. How do you speak words against the Most High? Now, Nebuchadnezzar spoke words against the Most High. Belshazzar obviously did. But this is very different, as you will see. Not only will he speak against the Most High, he shall wear out the saints. He shall think to change times and laws. So 3 things again. He will wear out the saints. He will speak against the Most High, and then he will think to change times. This power would attempt to change the very law of God. When one nation follows another, it nearly always changes human laws. When the British conquered India, do you think they just stuck with Indian laws? No, they obviously, when a nation conquers a nation, it's going to change its laws depending on the laws of that nation. That is important because, when United States started, it wasn't a nation conquering another nation. But I guarantee you, if Islam conquered United States, we're not going to have the same laws we have today. The reason why Ukraine is fighting tooth and nail, they're giving all they got to make sure Russia doesn't conquer them, is because once Russia conquers them, they're no longer under Ukraine law. Because it is the rule of conquering that once a nation conquers another nation, that nation will change its laws. Now, this little horn power would speak the great words against the Most High by assuming God's prerogative and attempting to change divine laws. This still gives me goosebumps when I talk about it. Because this little power says, you know what? I can overcome God's laws. I can change God's laws. the only person who would ever do something like that is someone who actually thinks they're God. It's going to cast truth down to the ground. And he did all of this and prospered. That is what scared Daniel. Usually, when nations would actually go against God, they won't prosper. But this one does. And so I want to talk a little bit about this change of law. If you've ever wondered how the change came from Sabbath to Sunday, how it actually occurred, we're going to talk a little bit about that today, because in my opinion, the Bible is pretty clear that it's this little horn who did that. Now, back before Christianity, it was pagans and Christianity. Pagans worship other gods, but one of the most powerful gods that they worship. When some of us go to Egypt, we will find out that there's a whole lot of images, drawings of people worshiping Amon-Ra, or the sun god. And the sun god was worshipped in many nations then. The Bible Encyclopedia says Sabbath, a Hebrew word signifying rest. Sunday was a name given by heathens to the first day of a week because it was a day on which they worshiped the sun. Again, before there was a Catholic church, there was only Christians and pagans. The Christians were worshiping on Sabbath, and the pagans worshiped on Sunday. That was just the way it was. That is what's the seen in the pyramids. That's what's seen in many of the nations that actually worshiped the sun god. However, in the 4th century, Constantine wanted to unify his kingdom. His kingdom, the Roman kingdom, was really falling apart at this time. It was one of those where they were losing. It was one of those times where they were losing power, and he thought it would do his kingdom so much good if he was only fighting in one front, that he wasn't fighting Christians. And so he wanted to get as many people on his side, and the one way he could do that is somehow combine Christianity and paganism. And so that's what he did. In AD 31, he says, on the venerable day of the sun, let the magistrates and people residing in cities rest, and let all the shops be closed. And in fact, some of his coins, not some of his coins, all his coins had his image in the front, and on the back of the coin was the sun god. Catholic World, page 809. The sun was a foremost god in heathendom. There is, in truth, something royal, kingly about the sun, making it a fit emblem of Jesus, the Son of Justice. This is how they justify how the sun god can and the Son, S-O-N, Jesus, can somehow be merged together. Hence, the church in these countries would seem to have said, keep that old pagan name and it will remain consecrated and sacrificed. And thus the pagan Sunday dedicated to Balder became the Christian Sunday sacred to Jesus. Here, they make it pretty plain. We're the ones who change it. It used to be that pagans would actually, I'm guessing pagans in Europe, would actually worship Balder. Now, Balder was a Viking god. People in Egypt were worshiping Amon-Ra, which is the sun god. And in Constantine's mind, he thought that his kingdom would prosper if somehow pagans and Christians would just get together and unify. And so what he did was he decided to combine Christianity and paganism. And so in the Council of Laodicea, now all these councils started out with what the church was back then. And again, when the church united paganism and Christianity together, it became known as the Roman Catholic Church. And what a Catholic means universal. Again, all of that, I think, is all part of what history symbolized. It says, Christians shall not Judaize and be idle on Saturday, but the Lord's day they shall especially honor, and as being Christians shall, if possible, do no work on that day. This, by the way, is the first Sunday law that was ever given. Basically, it said that Christians should not work on Sunday. Why? Because it's a holy day. When they combined paganism and Christianity, now Sunday became a holy day. If, however, they are found Judaizing, they shall be shut out from Christ. In other words, if they are found worshiping on Saturday, which is what Judaizing is, they're going to be shut out completely from Christ. This is the reason why so many Waldensians and other Christians in Europe, and we talked a little bit about this on the when we talked about the churches in Smyrna, because this is the Smyrna church. They actually had to flee to the mountains and find hiding places so that they can worship on Saturday. So the change of the Sabbath took place gradually. Now think about this. It thought it could change times and laws. It can't change times and laws. There's no man who can ever conquer God and somehow change his laws. But this little horn decided to actually change God's laws. This is the Catechism. I actually have this book. Somebody gave it to me. I can have it in my library, and so I know exactly where to find this. And part of this is what converts to Catholic Church go through. And this is one of the question and answers, because when you get to that part where, hey, why do we go to church on Sunday? This is one of the things that they will go through. Question: which is the Sabbath day? Saturday is the Sabbath day. Why do we observe Sunday instead of Sabbath? Because the Catholic Church transferred the solemnity from Saturday to Sunday. And again, I heard that there is a new version of the Catechism now that's somewhat smaller than the big one, and some people have told me that this might not be there anymore, but I have the bigger versions. I don't know. I don't have the smaller version, and I don't know how true that is. But like I said, this is in the Catechism. And so they come right out. They're not even hiding it. We're the one who changed it. Catholic Encyclopedia says the church, after changing the day of rest from the Jewish Sabbath of the seventh day of the week to first, made the third commandment refer to Sunday as the day to be kept as the Lord's day. Now, again, throughout Christendom, the Lord's day is now on Sunday, whether you're a Catholic or not. So many evangelicals would try to tell you and me that Jesus was the one who did this. I just want to let you know there's nothing in the Bible that actually says that. Now, I want us to see this because this visual, again, even when I'm telling you, gives me the goosebumps. The first 4 laws of God, I don't know if you can remember it, but you can look it up in Exodus chapter 20. The first one is, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Then number 2, thou shalt not have any graven images. Number 3, thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain. And number 4, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. The first 4 are always are laws that show that it is only God who you will worship. The last 6 talks about how you should treat each other. That's why when Jesus was asked, what's the greatest law? He said, love the Lord with all your heart, soul, and mind. And the second one is like unto it, he says. It's that you would love your neighbor as yourself. And he says, on both of this, hang all the laws and the prophets. But look what happens. In order to fit the beliefs of what was then the Catholic Church, they had to get rid of the second commandment. Remember what the second commandment was? Thou shalt not have any graven images. How do you explain bowing down to Mary, bowing down to Saint Peter, bowing down to all the saints? You can't explain that through the Ten Commandments. So you got to take it out. And by the way, you will only see this in the Catholic Bible. There's no second commandment there, right? So what they did was they made the fourth commandment the fifth. So you take out the second one. So now you have the first, thou shalt have no other gods before me. The third, thou shalt not take my name in vain. The fourth, remember the Sabbath. That's all it says. And then the fifth, honor thy father and thy mother, right? And then what they did was they divided the 10th, which is thou shalt not covet your neighbor's house. And then the other 10th is thou shalt not. No, I'm sorry. Oh, I forgot what the 10th was. I can't seem to get it, but some of you will look it up on Exodus 20 and you will see. So they had to take out number one. Why? Because now you have other gods. You have to. Mary is now a god. In fact, many Catholics would actually view Mary as higher than Jesus. And there is written literature on this. They're calling Mariology, is about how Mary, Mary has more significance even than Jesus. You have to take the second one, like we talked about, because you can't be a Catholic and not have any graven images. That's just part of it, right? Now, the third one, you can argue that obviously you're now taking God's name in vain if all of a sudden you add a whole bunch of other gods there. That's Israel's biggest problem. And then you take out the fourth commandment and change it from Sabbath to Sunday. So in one quick swoop, they take out all the commandments that talk about honoring God and say, no, we can change all of that. So that is why God called on Protestants. And again, we talked about this in the churches in the book of Revelation. They were Protestants because they were protesting this awful, sacrilegious blasphemy that was happening to the main church at that time. On this book, Catholicism and Fundamentalism by Karl Keating, it says, fundamentalists meet for worship on Sunday, yet there's no evidence in the Bible that corporate worship was to be made on Sundays. The Jewish Sabbath or day of rest was, of course, Saturday. It was the Catholic Church that decided Sunday should be the day of worship for Christians in honor of the resurrection. Now, does the church have the authority to change God's law? On the Faith of Our Fathers by James Cardinal Gibbons. This is a cardinal saying this. You may read the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, and you will not find a single line authorizing the sanctification of Sunday. The scriptures enforce the religious observance of Saturday. And so again, it's pretty clear. They're not hiding it. History is not hiding it. That they completely wiped out all the commandments that have to deal with worshiping God. When the Bible is pretty clear, again, Psalm 89:34, my covenant I will not break, nor alter the word that has gone out of my lips. That is why it is important that we know the covenant. You cannot interpret Daniel or Revelation without knowing the covenant. I don't think you can even understand the Bible without understanding the covenant. And God, from the very beginning, says, no, this covenant that I'm giving to you is forever. Toronto Daily Star says, Reverend Philip Harrington, Anglican Archbishop of Quebec, sent local clergymen to a huddle today by saying outright that there's nothing to support Sunday being kept holy. Harrington definitely told a church meeting in the city of straight-laced Protestantism that tradition, not the Bible, made Sunday the day of worship. And by the way, this is what the final battle is going to be about when we look at Daniel 13 and 14. Because isn't it logical that Satan, the great deceiver, would attack the Creator by challenging the symbol of creation? Wouldn't it make sense that Satan would want to take out all the laws that has to do with worshiping God? What good is it if human beings will come up and say, hey, we can worship on any day we want, we can worship in any way we want, as long as we put God's name there? As human beings, none of us can change God's laws. And what troubled Daniel is somehow this religio-political system was able to do it and prosper. So who changed the Bible Sabbath? Because God didn't. Malachi 3 verse 6, for I am the Lord, I do not change. Hebrews 13:8 says Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And in Exodus 20, this is the fourth commandment, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. Ezekiel 20 verse 12 says, moreover, I also gave them my Sabbaths to be a sign between me and them and me, that I might know that I am the Lord who sanctifies them. The sign is the Sabbath is a sign. And remember what we talked about, I think a few nights ago, the sign and the seal is the same thing in the book, in the Bible. So the Sabbath is God's seal that the people who follow him is being sanctified by God. The Sabbath is a sign between God and his people. Jesus kept the Sabbath. The apostles kept the Sabbath. And again, Matthew, Mark, and Luke says that the Sabbath is the Lord's day. And so the question that we would need to ask is, what is the foundation of your faith? Is it what man says or what the Bible says? The authority of the church could therefore not be bound to the authority of scriptures, because the church had changed the Sabbath to Sunday, not by the command of Christ, but by its own authority. So if you're ever asking why there's so many denominations today, and most of them are worshiping on the Sunday, there's something else that's behind that. And I think it's important to spend time on this, because for me, if you're going to look at where Satan has spent most of his time deceiving the world, it is on this issue. That's why in Revelation 14:12 says, here's the patience of the saints. Here are those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Now, when we go back, and this is where I want to actually look at, I want us to go to Daniel, because after the vision, right? Verse 11, Daniel 7 says, I watched then because the sound of the pompous words which the horn was speaking. I watched till the beast was slain and its body destroyed and given to the burning flame. As for the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. So it says that there is a time when these beasts actually get destroyed. However, it still keeps going for a time. So when we look at our world today, there's definitely still proof that these cities or these kingdoms are alive. But this fourth kingdom comes again in Revelation because it does come back to life. But after all of this, this is where Daniel's vision changes. And I want us to take note of this. It says, I was watching in night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven. He came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near to him. Then to him was given dominion and glory and kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion. Daniel needs to be reminded that even though this beast power or this little horn power tries to change everything that God has done, tries to change God's laws, the Ancient of Days, the Son of God, still wins. It doesn't tell us how, because that God kind of puts it on a pause and says, I'm going to give the rest of this vision, or I'm going to give the rest of the details of this vision to somebody else. And this is where the book of John, in the book of Revelation, really comes alive for me. When you go to verse 25, and we just read that, he shall speak pompous words against the Most High, shall persecute the saints of the Most High, and shall intend to change times and laws. Then the saints will be given to his hand. Then we go into for a time and times and half a time. But, and that's a key word, but the court shall be seated, and they shall take away his dominion to consume and destroy it forever. He's given a time period. We're going to go into time prophecy, especially in Revelation 13, and we're going to also go through it on Friday. Again, for me, we need to actually take one of the longest prophecies in the Bible to actually understand a little bit of time prophecy. Because this times and half a time, comes back again in the book of Revelation. And this is why this is so necessary, is because you will actually start fitting this beast where the time prophecy in the book of Revelation comes up with time, times, and half a time. And by the way, let me just give you a little teaser. Time, times, and half a time is 3.5 years. Time is 1 year. Times is time times 2, so that's 2 years. And half a time is half a time, so that's 3.5 years. What does that mean? Again, Daniel had no idea, because it's not going to be revealed until later. But God wanted to say, look, you need to keep this in mind. You got to keep this beast in mind, because when I give the prophecy to John the Revelator, God's people throughout time, but especially at the end of time, will say, I see the connection. But today, I want to end with this. Joshua 24:15, where it says, choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. I think when you follow God's word, there's a lot less confusion. Because one of the things Satan really wants to do is just confuse everybody. And if you're going to go by feelings, if you're going to go because you have most of your friends following a certain way or worshiping a certain way, then it does get confusing. But if God is who you'll follow, I can promise you it's going to be harder, but it is a lot less confusing. And again, when we look at this, because this comes up again in Revelation 13, we're going to go through another prophecy in the book of Daniel on Friday. And then on Saturday, we're going to look at Revelation 13. I'm sorry, Luke, we're going to look at Revelation 12. And then I think we're Revelation 13 on Sunday. Then we're going to take a week off and then really go through a little bit more on 13 and 14. But I'm hoping this is what this is my main point I wanted to bring tonight, which is there is a power behind changing God's laws. And the little horn is none other than the Roman Catholic Church. They're the ones who come right out and say, we changed everything. And they have proof. If you get the Catholic Bible, which you can get in Amazon, most Bible stores would actually have it. It's just hard to find Bible stores nowadays, or any bookstore for that matter. And you just go to Exodus 20. That's where the Ten Commandments is. You will see that the Ten Commandments in the Catholic Bible is very different. And so if God allowed this human power to have this much power to sway people's minds, then God is giving people a chance to choose. Are they going to follow God's word, or are they going to follow human tradition? Again, the Bible talks about how this power is going to succeed. It's going to be powerful. But even in the book of Daniel, it comes out there and says, no, God will ultimately succeed. No matter how big this power gets, God will ultimately destroy it. And by the way, the book of Revelation says the same thing. And so I hope that this has been somewhat clear. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. But the main thing I want you to make a choice tonight, I'm inviting you to make a choice, is who will you serve? Who will you follow? And if this has been clear and you haven't been doing this, or this is the first time you're hearing it, then you have a tough choice to make tonight. And the first place to go to when making tough choices in life is to go on your knees and say, God, please help me understand this. Please help me to follow you. So let me pray for you as we end tonight, shall we? Father, you know, all of us have to make choices in life. I pray that we choose you. So many times I wonder why Satan gets to do whatever he wants, or it seems that way. But it also shows us through here that you only allow him, just like you just allowed him in the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the Garden of Eden. And somehow Adam and Eve decided to choose him over you. And we look throughout the Bible, you give everyone a choice. And so many people choose to not go your way or not do things that you do, that you want them to do. So I pray that tonight, that you would help us to choose you at all costs. And I thank you, Lord, that you promise that if our hearts even cries out to you, that you will answer us, that you will answer our prayers, and that you will help us obey. Thank you for answering our prayer. Amen. Thanks, everyone.
Randall, I have a question.
Sure.
This was amazing and powerful teaching. I gained so much knowledge from this. And one of the reasons is because I was Roman Catholic for years. And I was so dedicated and so committed. I can't believe what I was really worshiping under. I had no idea. And just all of a sudden, I think years later, I woke up one day and something just said to me, this is wrong. You shouldn't be doing this. And I think it was all the statues that really started to bother me. And then here I am here with the Seventh-day Adventists. So when you were teaching, I was saying to myself, how did I get out from that? Because that was such bondage. I didn't know how I got out of it, but it was pretty frightening to see what I was doing. I just wanted to run and jump in the shower and clean myself off from all of this sacrilegious stuff, you know. I didn't know this was in the making. I didn't know what the Catholic Church was doing to us, but they were making us into slaves, I guess. I don't know.
Well, like I said, it's what's interesting for me is how God put it into prophecy, and the reason why He put it into prophecy is I'm not even sure Satan knew what he was doing until all of a sudden he's like, "Wait a minute, you're talking about me," type of a thing, and I think like what we talked about the first night when we talked about different interpretations. Again, when this became a little clearer around the 3rd or 4th century, where Christians were like, "Wait a minute, this is actually part of biblical prophecy." That in order to counteract it, the Catholic Church decided to have alternative interpretations. And that is where the beginning of the alternative interpretations are. And now it has just gone to all kinds of branches. And it's because if you look at it, it's pretty clear. You all, when you start messing with the prophecy, that's when it starts breaking down. But I don't know. I know as a church, we feel like we have to show it. We know that people will not be, we will lose friends when we do so. Just like people died while sharing this. Many people had to give their life because as soon as they shared it, they were going against a power that, as the prophecy said, it fought against God's saints.
Yeah. I think what I'm saying, yeah, thank you for that. I think what I'm really saying also is that if I had not been a part of that, I would not understand what you're talking about now.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. So the fight between good and evil is really the fight between the Sunday law and the Sabbath?
I think it's more than that, but that definitely is part of it. So, but again, when we go to the Book of Revelation, that becomes a little clearer.
Right. Would it be appropriate to show this to my Catholic friends?
You know, this is why I usually don't start here,
Mm-hmm.
because then now this is just a hammer. In fact, the rest of what we're going to do after we do this is what is that